the last meeting, a few citizens brought up that I want to elaborate on today. Recently, as most people know, our city manager, Michael Rock, was investigated and found to have improperly interfered in the November 2016 Banning City Council election with a declared goal to keep me from being reelected. From that, an investigation was ordered by the City Council, and one of the things that had come up in that investigation is the credibility of the witnesses. And in Section 8 of that report, and I'm going to try to read this, but the analysis of the credibility of the witness is an important aspect of a fact-finding investigation. As an accepted rule of evidence, a fact finder can disregard the statements of a witness who has been found to have been provided false or unreliable information during their testimony in a matter. Those witnesses' statements can be disregarded in their entirety and not believed unless there is compelling evidence to conclude that the individual statements otherwise are true. Concerning the witness statements, this fact finder considered the witness's demeanor while providing the statement, the character of the witness statement, the extent of the witness capacity to perceive, to recollect, or to communicate and matter about which he gave a statement, the extent of the witness's opportunity to perceive any matter about which he gave a statement, the witness's character for honesty or veracity or their opposites, the existence or non-existence of a biased interest or other motive, a statement previously made by the witness that is consistent with the statement during the fact-finding investigation, a statement made by the witness that is inconsistent with any part of his statement during the fact-finding investigation, and the witness's attitude toward the fact-finding investigation in which he gave a statement or toward the giving of a statement. Now, it concluded by the fact finder or the investigator to quote, Mr. Rock appeared credible in some portions of his statements to the fact finder and lacking credibility in other portions of his statement, unquote. That being said, on February the 14th, our mayor, Mayor George Moyer, read the following statement. In November 2015, the city hired Michael Rock as its city manager, and Mr. Rock continues to serve in that capacity. In late summer 2016, an allegation was made that Mr. Rock attempted to persuade a community member to run as a write-in candidate in the November 16 general election against Councilmember Peterson. In response, the city initiated an investigation into the validity of the allegation. There has been a substantial amount of public discussion about this issue, including at several council meetings. Consequently, as a council, we have decided to issue this statement publicly. Although the investigation revealed that Mr. Rock did not try to solicit a community member to run in the election, the facts developed do reveal that Mr. Rock asked a department head if he could locate a suitable candidate to run against Councilman Peterson. There was no evidence that the department head followed up or took any action. Mr. Rock's behavior in this matter was not acceptable. Mr. Rock inappropriately attempted to interfere with the local municipal election by soliciting a fellow employee to find a candidate to run against an incumbent council member. This council hired Mr. Rock to be a non-political administrator, and we expect that he will not take sides in city election. Now, this last sentence is very important. We have advised Mr. Rock that such conduct will not be tolerated at any point in the future. And this is the end of the mayor's quote. So now it has come to my attention that keeping me from being reelected may not have been the only political activity the city manager has engaged in while conducting official business for the city. We currently have 2 vacancies on the Planning Commission. It appears there was an attempt made by the city manager to use his office to facilitate the appointment of a particular candidate to the commission who is known as a strong supporter of the interest of the developer, Diversified Pacific. It should be mentioned that the principal of this developer is currently on trial in San Bernardino for multiple counts of bribery. The candidate of choice for developer Diversified Pacific is Jan Spann. It is a matter of record that Spann came before the council to strongly support the developer's 3,400 home project called Rancho San Gregorio. It is also a matter of record that Spann, who is a trustee on the Banning School Board, used her position on the board to have the board issue a letter of support for Diversified Pacific's project. The local lobbyist for developer Diversified Pacific, we all know, is Bob Botts. Those who do not remember him, Botts used to be a Banning city councilman and a former mayor to our city. He resigned in 2013 during a council meeting within minutes after voting on an issue that benefited Diversified Pacific. Only a few weeks ago, Botts, since then a paid lobbyist for this developer, wrote the following message on Jan Spann's Facebook. Now, this is a post that Jan had put on her Facebook on March 19th at 2:36 p.m. And she quotes that she's feeling bummed that tomorrow is the first of 2 surgeries. At 6:22 p.m., Bob Botts says, quote, prayers, unquote. Jan responds, quote, any news after the golf tournament? End quote. Botts, quoting, Michael thought it was a great idea, and he said he was going to call you. I would call him. He said there were 2 spots, and the one lady on the commission doesn't want to serve anymore. George was not there. Once you submit your application, I would call Art, Debbie, and George. Good luck on your surgery, end quote. The post indicates that City Manager Michael Rock yet again appears to have used his position as City Manager to unduly inject himself into the political process. Botts makes mention of the City Manager voicing his support for Spann and offering to call her in order to facilitate her appointment. After the post was made, Jan Spann submitted her application to the city for the Planning Commission. Now, I'm asking for a full investigation of this matter as it relates to the City Manager Rock having violated his professional ethics once again. I'm also asking for Jan Spann's application to be put on hold pending the outcome of the investigation. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the following email was sent by the city attorney to Michael Rock, suggested Rock once again used his position as city manager to direct the city attorney to find legal grounds for disqualification of then council candidate Daniela Andretti. Quote from the city attorney, hi Michael, following up on your question from yesterday, there is no per se or inherent conflict of interest if an individual is elected to the city council and their spouse is on the local school board. Certainly there could arise specific situations where a conflict could arise based on specific decisions. But the Political Reform Act does not prohibit a person from seeking public position just because their spouse holds another public position or private employment. For example, in an advice letter, the FPPC addressed the following question: would an individual who is interested in running for an elected position on the Castaic Lake Water Agency Board have a conflict of interest if she is elected to a position on the Castaic Board, since her husband is an elected director on the Newhall County Water District Board? The FPPC found no conflict because the salary her husband receives from the Newhall Board is excluded from the definition of income under the Act and will not create a conflict. As noted above, there could be situations where a particular decision affecting the school district could impact the city, especially in the land use context. A conflict in those situations would have to be resolved on a case-by-case basis. End of quote. The following email, I'm asking for the investigation to include this email, as it may constitute a separate attempt of election interference and may constitute a violation of city manager's professional ethics as well. The following email, sent by Michael Rock to the city attorney, appears to indicate that Rock used city resources in an attempt to silence the online publication known as the Banning Informer. In particular, Rock instructed the city attorney to render a legal opinion whether or not any article posted on the Banning Informer qualified as slander under the law. Quote, Michael refers to the city attorney, quote, if you don't already know about this online illegitimate news service, see this link here and let me know what you think about the comments about the council members and staff. The Banning Informer started at the same time that Don Peterson and Ed Miller were elected, not a coincidence. Do you see a concern that the Banning Informer could be sued for slander? I'm asking for the upcoming investigation to also include this email, as it may constitute another ethics violation by the city manager, Michael Rock, and because it provides evidence of the unlawful use of city resources for the sole purpose of stifling political discourse and interfering with the freedom of the press. Then we want to get into the brush clearance entrance. It was reported in the Banning Informer that the city recently performed brush clearing service for the purpose of increasing freeway visibility for Diamond Hills Chevrolet. Now, before I go any further, I want to make it clear that I'm not opposed to the entity known as Diamond Hills to expose its inventory. And I think it's a good thing that the inventory be exposed. It's good for sales and it's good for him. But we'll get into others. No other business benefited from this action. The brush clearance was performed on Interstate 10, which is under the jurisdiction of the state of California. A Caltrans permit was obtained by the city. The city council was never informed of the city's intent to perform such work. It appears that the brush clearing was ordered by Councilmember Art Welch. I had questioned the city manager in an email, and I asked him, was there a written contract? And there was no written contract, correct? He refuses to answer. Obviously, this was a handshake agreement, and I think one needs to refer to the grand jury report of 2015-2016, when the grand jury makes a recommendation to the city that says that Banning formalize its financial dealings and not utilize handshakes or past practices with other entities. that Banning develop written policies and procedures necessary to review contracts and/or leases to ensure compliance. Obviously, we've not done that yet. We don't know the terms of the handshake agreement. We know that there was not a deposit because I asked all those questions prior. Was there a deposit? Was there an agreement? What was the billing rate? How much were we charging for front-end loaders, dump trucks, chippers? And at one point in time, it was reported there was approximately 20 employees there. If there was no contract or deposit, this suggests that the intent likely was to do this for free in hopes that nobody would notice. This would constitute an illegal gift to public funds, which is something Councilman Art Welch is well known for. The one question I do have now is for the city attorney, and that's, were you ever consulted on any of the legal issues regarding this project?
No, I was not.
So it does away with all the other questions. What I'm going to demand is that a staff report be given by Mr. Rock at the next city council meeting, and that how this once again circumvented our own policy, our own procedure. How was it that city employees were placed on an interstate highway to clear brush for a private entity? None of it makes sense to me. And when I was at home and I was ill and my phone was ringing off the hook and my email was being inundated with pictures that people were taking along the highway. This is not something that we should be involved in. And obviously neither did the city employees, because the city employees were part of the ones making the complaint. So we need to have, as a council, we need to have an investigation done regarding these things.